its student interface, its modularity, scalability, and features, but it's not well suited for to on-campus use. There are insufficient features to work with individual students. You all know that you cannot send a message to an individual student. All the features that you can find in, for example, Canvas or Sakai or in Moodle, you are not going to find them when you want to address an individual student in OpenEdX. Then there are other on-campus activities, like, for example, sharing files and letting them open for a period of time and this type of things, or decoupling exams from learning sequences that are also not very well supported on OpenEdX. In Spain, and I suppose that in the rest of the world, we have in-class groups that are assigned to certain teachers. We have classes that are, for example, 150 people, and inside they have several groups. But there are several layers of those groups that one can be, for example, for theory classes, the other one for lab classes. And in OpenEdX, you only have cohorts, and you cannot have several different groups of cohorts. I think that Studio is a little bit thought about someone who knows about learning interface design, a little bit of HTML. It's not so simple sometimes to put text, to upload files and join them, and link them. So all these things are what makes us think, why don't we change this? But the question that arises is, so if all of this is not well suited for on-campus use, why do you want to change it and don't use Sakai or that's the one that we have, or Moodle? And that's because we like very much the learning sequence-based OpenEdX interface. We think that even as in every other LMS, you can find something that's similar, is not that good. So we think that it's worth to devote some money and effort to doing this thing. So these are the universities that are doing so. That is Valencia, Universitat Politècnica de València, my university for Valencia, and the rest are the public universities for the region of Madrid. Universidad Carlos III de Madrid, Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, Universidad Complutense de Madrid, Universidad Politècnica de Madrid, Universidad de Alcalá de Henares, Universidad Rey Juan Carlos, and all of them are, all the universities in Spain are part of a project that's called Uni Digital that has 142 million that has from the EU sent to universities to improve their digital stance. And we have one collaborative project with these universities that is a little bit more than €500,000 for this project. We have decided to devote this money to try to improve OpenEdX for on-campus. The project has 16 different parts, and really there are 17, but these 16 are all together, and there is a 17th that is improving a gamification app that Universitat Carlos III already has, that I will comment later. As you can see, the project is going to be about improving the real-time analytics, both global and individual, because OpenEdX is very good for one course analytics, but not for having a lot of courses or for addressing one individual. This thing about class groups, I've told you, trying to integrate an automatic feedback tool that's called OnTask, that is open source, improvement of ORA tool or extension of grading capabilities, letting a teacher address one individual student or one group of students, enhancing user-student interface and course creation interface, integrating H5P natively or min maps, or creating a tool for students to rate the content developed by the teacher, integrating a real multilingual tool that lets you have the same content in the same course in different languages, integrating a strong open source service tool that's called Line Survey, or creating a file management tool that in which teachers can upload files and put dates in which they are open, and students can see them and download them without having to put links. Also, creating a simple system of student failure prediction and trying to integrate an advanced voice assistant. This all together, we have launched a public tender that has been awarded to eduNEXT, and that's why we are doing the presentation together. And to try to coordinate this as much as possible with the community, we have created an on-campus working group in OpenEdX that has been meeting for a couple of months. And several organizations that are in similar projects and that want to put all the efforts in line have joined. For example, Axim, To OpenCraft, that is working for Arizona State University for a project for Ethiopian universities, eduNEXT with us, and ourselves. And now the project, these are the things that eduNEXT has started working on, and I think that now Felipe can tell you more about them.
Sure, gladly. I will share a presentation here about the current process, the current project progress. So the first time we started on was analytics, because this was the most difficult one, and there was plenty to be done. So everything I'll share now, I'll share with this overall framework, that is the goal we wanted to achieve and the strategy. How do we actually try to push the community in one particular direction? So here the goal of analytics was to empower teachers and content authors with real-time analytics. And this one was a very difficult goal to achieve. Luckily for us, in the time that it took the project charter to complete and that we were awarded the project, the OARS initiative started in the community. So our strategy was that we threw our full support into the OARS project. And we are trying to accelerate its development, its scope, extensibility, everything that we can do on top of the OARS project we're doing there. So far the result, and we have been working on this probably 2 months, even a little bit before the project was actually awarded to us. After the conference, we started working because we saw the tremendous power of the OARS initiative. We have merged so far something like 62 different PRs with the difference of, I don't know, we're creating new features, fixing bugs, enhancing the scope, and so far. We started running a production-grade installation on top of Kubernetes. And we're working very closely with the working group, the campus working group, to have a first draft, the first list of analytics that we want to share with everyone, that may be the backbone of the first dashboard of OS. This progress is very good so far, and we are something around like the 16 out of 24 issues are solved, and those would mark the version 1 milestone, something that is installable and can be used. So far the progress in analytics has been going very good. On a different part of the project, we started the collaboration on the flexible groups. That's what Ignacio just mentioned, that universities have these large groups that they later split into class groups. So a whole course may be split into several different class groups, and this could not be done on top of the cohorts functionality, because it was limited and is mutually exclusive. So we are trying to, for this, our strategy was to start the community discussion very early. So we started with the campus working group, outlining everything we need to do, and even proposing some technical draft of how could this be achieved without doing too much in the area of the code right now. We're just investigating, and we're trying to flesh out all these discussions before we're committed to writing the code in any particular way, because we don't want to waste effort. There is no time for that. And in here, I'd like to invite you, anyone that heard that and thought, yes, I would like to have this, please go to that roadmap ticket, number 250, and write your thoughts or participate in the discussion of what needs to be done in terms of flexibility of grouping in the course enrollments. Another project that I'd like to highlight is the file management project. For this, we also saw it as a very involved technical change. Many things were going to change both in the studio and in the LMS, because we want to map the functionality that is present in the other LMSs, where a course author or a professor can upload all the files in like a folder structure, and then present the students with that, with different dates and with some organization like course handouts. And And this was going to be tricky. So we started the discussion right away with the community, and it turns out that you also have plans to do something similar. So we adapted our list of requirements, and we started working both with you and early in the design. It's called the design sprint. A new initiative that's being formed, so that we are joining the product, the campus working group, the product working group, and the UX UI working group in this effort. So far, this design sprint was one of the results, and that's all for the studio experience. We will be working on a learning-facing experience at the LMS. Hopefully soon in the future, but so far we are focusing on the studio parts of this. And lastly, I'd like to highlight the student communications effort. And there, we wanted to upgrade the capabilities of the platform, sending individual emails, having the groups that we mentioned in the grouping section be part of this. And there, our strategy was to realize, or we realized that some of this was already being maintained in the communications MFE, which was lacking a maintainer. So we volunteer as maintainers of that, and we are trying to get that project started using the communications MFE. But also, it turns out that a different community provider already has a project that could be used for this, so we are evaluating that, and we are not dead set on our approach. The more we can collaborate on reaching these goals, the better for us, for the project, and for the whole community. I think I'm running short on time, so some other things that are happening in this space, if you are interested around ratings or extending Aura or line survey as a tool for surveys, or in general studio UI improvements, please let us know. We will be in the area below on the discussions after the presentations are over. So I'll be happy to talk about this a little bit more when that time comes.
Thank you very much, Felipe and Nacho, for your presentation. Now, let's see if someone has any questions on the chat. Let me check. Okay. So, is there a file management? Is the file management a repository provided by the universities? That's one of the questions. Maybe Felipe or Nacho.
Yeah,
a general idea. Really, what we want is to replicate what you can do with Moodle or you can do with Canvas, in which you have a file tool. The teacher has a file tool, and the only thing he or she has to do is to drop the file from the hard disk and say, this is going to be available from that day to that day. It can be organized in folders. It's a tool that is completely separated from the learning sequence. It's a tool that every on-campus learning management system has, but edX don't have. You have to upload all the files to the same place. Then you have to put the link with HTML in the place you want to do it. So this is the idea. But now Felipe can tell you that one part is how the teacher uploads the files, that is being done to you, and the other part is how the students are going to see this. That is what they are doing.
Okay. Yes, exactly. One of the issues here is that we tend to think of files as something that you upload and it's sitting there somewhere, but due to the requirements of the scale and the way OpenEDX handles files, it has a much more involved process. Every file is converted into byte-stream chunks, and it's stored somewhere, and it's reconstructed on the moment the user requests a file. This also allows us to have fine-grained access permissions to each of the files. So we are trying to keep that power engine that manages all the files, but put a more friendly enterprise on top of it. So it's not for a university repository, but it's more for a course repository of the files that will be available for that course.
Great, thank you. So one other question: how is the new proposed group experience different from the current one?
On a technical level, is very different. Right now, there are two different options for grouping users in a course. One is the cohorts feature and one is the teams feature. Teams allow you to have like private discussions, like a subset of the forum that is only available for people in that team, and users can self-subscribe into teams. They can be assigned or they can self-subscribe. Cohorts, on the other hand, they have to be assigned by the staff of the course, and they allow you to have like access to different bits of the content of the course. And they are mutually exclusive. You can only belong to one of the cohorts. What we want to have is like a wrapper of those two, something that will allow you to have different groups where you belong at the same time. Those groups will also allow you to have like specific bits of content, specific files, specific messaging tools, and also the discussions. So it's
I can
it's like a group of all those features. Just one last thing, and also those users will be related to like a teaching assistant professor that will be in charge of those groups.
I can give you a use case. We are trying to implement this for on-campus use, but because this is how university is organized in Spain. But I can give you a use case in MOOCs that we would like to do and we cannot do. For example, if we wanted to do cohorts by language, so we can assign a different type of content to one group of users, depending on their language, you cannot have another cohorts for other things. So what we'd like to have is several, let's say, layers. Perhaps it's not the best way because you can mix it with programming, but let's say several like groups of different cohorts in which in this group of cohorts, you have these students here and these students here. And then you have another group of cohort where you group them separately. For example, in Spain, we have a layer, let's call for theory, where we have groups of, let's say, 80 people. And then we have a layer for laboratories where the same people in the same course are grouped like 20 per group. And another different, and for these groups, you can have different teachers, different content. So it's a mixture of the flexibility of teams and the features of cohorts.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your answers. So we have one last question. So are these developments, are they going to be released open to the community? When is it estimated? And if they do, which are the plans of maintaining these features in the future? What help would you need from the community?
Empiezo yo, Felipe, si quieres. The idea is, a lot of the work that we have been doing before the tender and at the start is trying to ensure that everything is aligned with the community, so it's not another project that is lost in a fork after this is finished. So we are flexible in we want some capabilities, but we are flexible in how to implement them because we want to be as integrated as possible. And that's why we started speaking with the Axim team to have a group speaking about that. And the other thing is that there are other institutions investing money in similar things, and we wanted to align all the efforts, even if they are not going to be exactly what we expected. So they are accepted by the community and they are maintained in the future, and they are useful not only for us but for other people. If Felipe wants to add something more.
Yeah, at a technical level, one thing that we've been very cautious about is having this, what you mentioned, forks that get lost in time and no one updates them anymore. So the way we're trying to find an architecture for these features is that whatever is too specific of the Spanish consortium, we put into extensions that are stable, built on top of the hooks framework. And whatever that we can agree upon with the community, then we try to put in the core, and this is going to be maintained for a longer term. So it's a mixture of those two.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're running out of time, but please keep in mind that after the presentations, you can meet Nacho and Felipe in the unstructured areas. We will publish which carpet each one is going to be. So thank you very much for your presentations, and now we'll continue with the next one.
Thank you very much.
So next presentation, it's from Ilya Shetaskov, a software engineer at Abstract Technology, and he will be presenting a data security tool called edX Backup. So Ilya, go ahead with your presentation.
Hello, well, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, nice. So I will be sharing my screen. Yeah, here it goes. So, well, I will be presenting our backup tool, well, edX Backup. So why do such a thing? Well, the motivation was to improve our motivation to develop this solution was to increase our improve our backups and to share this knowledge with the wider community. So what was the goals, the criteria? This is pretty standard criteria. It should be encrypted, so it can be it's secure. It should be offsite, so it won't be lost if the host if our backup host is lost. It should be regular to ensure that the backup is useful. And of course, it should be restorable, so also it could be useful. And we had this edX, well, it was kind of an in-house tool before the third version, and it had some flaws, like it wasn't really encrypted. It was offsite, but it supported basically only one target, the OpenStack Swift. And well, it couldn't back up the Minio, the S3, and but that means Minio on most our cases, and it was writing intermediate data on local disk, which may cause troubles if there's no space on disk to fit these backups. So the goal was to back up all the OpenEdX data sources that's currently MySQL, Mongo, and S3 to avoid writing to local disk and to decouple the backup process from the storage process, because well, some of our clients weren't happy with OpenStack Swift. They wanted to store their backups on other places. Yeah, so for the underlying technology, we choose Restic, which is a really nice backup tool. It's simple to use. Well, it supports a lot of storage protocols. So by itself, it supports like the enterprise ones like S3 and Backblaze B2. But if you combine it with the Arclone, it supports virtually any cloud storage you can imagine. So you have choices. It's secure, it encrypts your data, and it's quite efficient. It's written in the Golang programming language, which might not be the best performance, but it's quite nice. So to make an actual backup, well, we used the standard MongoDB tools from MongoDB, MyDumper for MySQL, which is not really standard, but it was just faster and more convenient to use. And surprisingly, S3 was the most most complicated thing to backup, because there's no ready-to-use tool that will produce a tarball from the S3 bucket. So we had to make our own little tool to do that. Yeah, basically the edX backup takes the data from MySQL, Mongo, and S3, creates 3 separate Restic snapshots and stores it into a repository which someplace elsewhere, or on your local disk. Actually, you can also do that. Restic supports that. Yeah, and you can see on this diagram that these backup groups kind of they're sitting on top of each other. That's because Restic also does deduplication, so your backups are kind of incremental. So there's if they share some data, it will be reused on the remote side. Yeah, well, basically it's an open source tool. You can use it as you want. We provide the packages on PyPI and containers on the Docker Hub. Yep. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ilya, for your presentations. Well, I think first question has been answered with this last slide. It was how can we start using the edX backup in our courses, right?
Yeah, there's the link to the GitHub. There's a README. It's well, it's quite small, but I think it's quite informative.
That's great. So let me see if we have another question. So can this backup solution be used with any cloud provider?
Well, mostly. Well, the Restic alone can use, I think, S3s, OpenStack Swift, Azure Blob Storage, and SFTP. And it can be used in combination with rclone, and rclone supports virtually any cloud storage. If it doesn't support something, well, then that's a surprise.
Okay, great. So let's see if you have another question. So how did you uncover the need for this versatile data security tool?
Well, the need, well, it mostly came out of the demand from one of our clients to keep their backups on the Azure Blob Storage container that they control. So the original one, or backup before version 3.0, it couldn't do that. So we had to invent some things around it, and just at some point we decided to make the edX backup to decouple it from the storage, and then we discovered Restic, and it was just a good tool. Such a nice discovery, so we decided to just make edX backup use all the Restic, so we can see more storage.
Yeah, so I have one more question. So in which use cases can this development be a critical part of an open edX development?
Well, speaking about the development, it's actually quite useful if you need to, like, for example, to move your staging databases to production. You can pass it through edX backup. It will save it on the S3 bucket, for example, or any other cloud storage, and then you can restore it onto your production database. So that's how it can be used in development.
Well, that's great. So I think there are no more questions. So thank you very much, Ilya. Just feel free to contact Ilya in Carpet D after the next presentation if you have any other questions or just want to connect. Okay. Thank you very much, Ilya. Great. So now we'll proceed with the third presentation. So welcome Stephanie Kurana. She's the CEO of Axin Collaborative, and Okay, you're already here in the cafeteria. So welcome, Stephanie. Welcome to the edX meetup.
Great. Thank you so much, Esteban. Really appreciate your leadership of the group and with Eden as well. And just thank you all for welcoming me into this community. I'm new to the Open edX community, and being part of such a global group really means a lot to me. So thank you for being so welcoming. And also just wanted to thank you for your commitment to the work of Open edX, the platform and the community, your perspectives around the globe as innovative technologists, educators, leaders, and visionaries is what makes this community strong. And I know all of us believe in education as a core value that really has been a fork in the road for many of us, for our families and the people that we care about. And it can be a great equalizer. It's what brings me to this work. And I know believing in the power and the potential of so much talent that's untapped around the globe is really quite critical. And while education can be a great equalizer, at the same time, the lack of being able to complete a quality education exacerbates the inequalities that we see in the world. And so we know that a quality education not only expands minds, but the foundation for economic well-being in society. And I think some of those values and those aspirations, or those experiences where we know of people who faced barriers and were held back and had their potential limited, is I think a lot of the motivations that bring us together, and to really help more students realize their potential for learning, working, living, and being in the world as we experience it today. So just really glad to be here with all of you around some of those values and aspirations. I think you all know where Axum came up. It was born out of edX's vision to create new, bold educational paths through online learning for everyone, everywhere, and was really groundbreaking when it was launched over a decade ago, originally by Harvard and MIT, but many of you and others. And millions of people have, in fact, had access to quality courses. But one of the things as we look deeper is that access is not enough, and that many learners already have degrees and they're using the courses as ways to augment their learning. But there's many more who have yet to earn a credential, a degree, or to complete it in a way that actually drives the type of impact we all are, I think, aspiring towards. And so now that edX is part of 2U and kind of stewarding the kind of the market-based, the competitive market, and serving a lot of learners, there's a chance for Axum Collaborative to now double down on those learners where we can really help them benefit the most. And that's, that's globally. Where we are, we're starting in the US with some of our work, where there's some of the challenges that I'll talk a little bit about, but all of this is driven by a global need, and allowing Axum to double down on its roots and go even bolder and drive further impact, I think, is the potential ahead for all of us. So what does that mean in terms of the work that we're doing? So I'll bring you up to speed on kind of where we're focused and some of the specific areas where we see opportunity. And in fact, I think even just heard in the two presentations echoed before me. So what does this mean? So we're trying not just to help learners access a course, but complete a program of study, a credential, a degree, and then find a strong job that leads to economic well-being, not just for the student, but for their family. And then we know that that has ripple effects throughout society and communities. And we all know too that this is a moment in time where learner needs are shifting, demographics are shifting, technology is evolving, how we're using AI, predictive AI, generative AI, other learnings from the pandemic in terms of new ways that students can learn in blended, hybrid cohorts, ways that they're that perhaps they hadn't thought of it before, and not just the learners, but the instructors and the faculty as well. And thinking about what are some of the things that are on the forefront or on the cutting edge of innovative technology and pedagogy that can help learners persist. And we know too that working in partnership with institutions that serve those learners can help us reach many, many more learners too, and ensure that they're actually reaching the completion that they're aspiring towards. we know there's a lot of those learners. So in the US alone, there are 40 million learners who've started a degree but have not finished it. Many people find that to be a surprising statistic. We know how important some type of degree or credential is. You actually earn 75% more if you have a degree than if you don't have one. Over 55% today, though, actually don't believe that a degree is worth it. That's a problem. The quality of the education or the accessibility or the cost, those are things we have to innovate around to help overcome the barriers that are holding people back. Of the learners today, the students who are currently enrolled, there are about 16 million. And this is in the US I'm speaking about. I'll talk about global in a minute. And that of those 16 million, there's only about 1 million that are in some kind of residential experience. And so that means most learners are doing some type of hybrid blended learning, still connected to an institution, but less than 50% complete it in 4 years, and in 6 years as well. The rates are only a little bit higher. And if you are a low-income first-gen person of color, those completion rates are even lower because of various barriers that we know ideas and ways to overcome. And so that's where our focus is, to help those learners succeed. Globally, there's over 230 million. Many of you know this. And thinking about how do you help those learners find meaningful employment and connecting to jobs that actually give the economic mobility that helps to actually support more equality and drive down the inequality that we're seeing around the globe. So that's where Axum is focused, on those learners, thinking about what are those barriers and how can we innovate around the best technological innovations combined with pedagogy, and to think about, in partnership with other institutions, how can we provide the technology, the expertise, grant funding, ways that help provide greater accessibility, and then making sure that it sticks, making sure that it's something that will in fact sustain over time. And so we will do that through these practice innovations that might be on engaging students in courses and how they engage in courses, how those courses are delivered, how they're accessible synchronously, asynchronously, how those courses relate to jobs. Do those career pathways actually, are they represented in the sequence of courses? Are students persisting through those sequence of courses, and what kind of supports do they need to actually enable them to persist? And that means things like cohort learning, or ways that perhaps there would be ways, generative AI is quite early right now, but maybe there's ways to use that as additional study or tutoring support. Thinking about other ways for students to envision and see themselves in a career that with other people that are that they can see, wow, I can see myself in a job like that, whereas maybe I didn't before. And how can we actually connect those careers to jobs and look at labor market data to say what's available, and then how can we make those connections? So those are some of the kinds of projects and efforts we're focused on and learning from and about. And we hope that through this type of focus, particularly on the people that right now are being left out, that we can actually help support more students succeed in ways that build upon the great work that's already been done, that we know how to do in terms of open access, hybrid learning, engaged learning, but thinking about how we can just reach more people through partnerships and collaborations. So let me pause there and see what kinds of questions you might have, or where I might be able to clarify my comments.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie.
Yes.
So I have a question in the chat, in the room chat. So Wayahat here from Medley, we are discovering generative AI use cases like AI tutor, real-time feedback, grading, GPT-0, and a couple of other use cases for learners and instructors alike. Would love to collaborate in this space, right? I think AI it's a huge topic, and well, I think all the communities it's eager to find a path to connect with OpenEdX, right?
Yes. Yep. No, thank you so much for that comment. And I think, there's a lot of really important opportunities that you noted, and we really want to understand how are they applied in thoughtful ways that help support equity for all students. So thinking about what can we learn from where and how we implement those technologies, and then in what ways do they help support students persist, and then and what concerns do people have? I mean, there's all sorts of things we need to think about in terms of the kind of data that's being used to train generative AI, and is that representative? Are we doing it in a way that fits the needs of the learners and the institutions I mentioned, the broad access institutions that have a wide range of learners and needs? So I think there's a lot to explore in terms of understanding the opportunities for generative AI, as well as the things we have to be cautious and careful about, including privacy and security. I've heard that question come up a lot. What does that mean? And so I welcome those conversations and appreciate the opportunity for deep thought around how we can really leverage these tools for good, and making sure that we feel confident about that, because I think that's a really important role that Axum can play.
Yes, great, thank you. So one other question here. So will funded contribution proposals have to align with the overall mission of Axum? I think this is referring to the funded contributions for the Open edX project, right? Which is part of the Axum collaborative mission.
Yes. Thank you, Nicole, for that question. So the funded contributions are aligned to the product roadmap, and we recognize that Axum is new, and Open edX has a platform set of priorities that are really important to deliver upon. And so the answer is yes, we want them to align, but I would say broadly speaking, particularly in the early years, because I know there are a lot of priorities for the platform itself to make sure that just the basic everything from the architecture and the modularity and some efforts around taxonomy, a lot of those things are going to both help enhance the platform so that it's sustainable for the long run, but then also increase the usage, which I know relates to a much broader set of learners than what I said for my focus, but recognize that that's important. So the answer is, I think it would be ideal if everything lined up 100%, because I think we'll reach a lot of learners and have significant impact. And as an open community, and as the need to really have a nonprofit focused on learners that are left out, we recognize that the Open edX platform and community will only be sustainable if we're following a coordinated roadmap. So hopefully that answered your question. And if not, come to the carpet and I can follow up in more detail.
Great, thank you. So here's another question. When might we expect details of specific projects Axum will be pursuing?
Yes, so we will, as we develop them, we will post them on our website and communicate with the community. So we have some discussions underway, and so they are in development. And as we complete those, we will share that with the community. And our website's pretty rudimentary at the moment, as we're kind of a startup ourselves in an exciting way. It brings me back to my entrepreneurial roots, which I love. But it also reminds me that sometimes getting things like your website up and your office space in place, that's all kind of part of the job. But know that we're hard at work really trying to develop those partnerships, and we'll communicate them as they come to fruition.
Okay, great. So one other question here from Cecilia. Talking about global community and job market, sadly, some of the underprivileged areas or countries do not have access to this much support. I am wondering if Axum has an initiative for that part.
Yeah. So we do have global aspirations, and I think, in fact, supporting a lot of the work of the Open edX platform, being mindful what are the needs of global learners and faculty and communities. So our initial will be thinking about how this work extends to global communities. And then in our, probably not our very first year, we'll continue to look beyond the borders where we are, but we're just trying to get some traction with kind of the US, just given where edX roots started from. But at the same time, I know that a lot of our partners do serve global communities. So it's still in the forefront of our minds. It's particularly in the forefront of my mind, where I came from just prior to here, was with a global foundation in venture philanthropy. And well over half of our work was global. And I have a lot of actually organizations that I've supported and other foundations I've worked with in the global community. And so I'm keeping all of those discussions and conversations active to see where we might be able to connect. So it's definitely an important area of mine. And I've always known that I've learned just as much, if not more, from the global community than what I often find in our backyard. So I appreciate that thought and know that it's a priority, but not just kind of the very immediate one with these initial projects, other than through the work we're doing through the edX community.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me see if I have another question. So how are you planning to fill and grow the Open edX provider ecosystem?
That's a great question. I know Ed is too, and Eden and others. We are very excited to grow the partner community. So I think I'm sort of in listen and learn mode, and like I said, feeling welcome to be part of this community and getting to know many of you and the different roles you play in the ecosystem. So we're very open to hearing your ideas about how we might do that.
Okay, that's great. Let me see if we have a question. So another question. So will Axim only use open source technology to fulfill its mission of aiding unserved learners and increasing access to educational resources?
So we will look broadly for what are the right technologies and education pedagogical practices, and then figure out what's going to make sense for partners. And I expect that the Open edX platform will be a key part of that. But as we even mentioned in the earlier part of the conversation, there are other technologies that might be plugging in, or that might augment, or might be part of it. So I think we have to be thoughtful about where different technologies can play a role, and then helping to support and enable those. So Open edX won't be the only technology we use, but I'm eager to think about how we can get more downloads and installations into other partners, and how we can leverage it as one of the ways that we expand the footprint. But I do think other technologies will play an important role in terms of solving the problem that I discussed earlier. Okay,
great. I think we don't have any other questions so far. Just a general comment. So you were talking about the US environment and the global environment. And here in the room, well, you can take a quick look at people that it's sitting in these chairs. And I think one of the key strengths of the community is the diversity in terms of different points of views, different use cases, different environments, different countries, different regions. So, well, now I put my hat from the community member, and well, we are more than willing to contribute with our perspectives, and just feel free to reach to any one of us that we are passionate about education, and also about the transformative effect that has in particular in regions which the average access is really low, right? So again, well, I welcome you to the community again, and it's great to have you here, and we are all more than open to collaborate, and and provide feedback on any issue that you want to dig deep in.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Esteban. Thank you all of you for welcoming me, and I look forward to those conversations. I always learn so much and know that it's where the best ideas come from. Sometimes is when you have hard challenges to tackle, and then you share them. So just grateful to be part of this community. So thank you.
Okay, great. So thank you, Stephanie. I think we don't have more questions so far. So now we can close this presentations stage, and then we can move to the instructor area. Feel free to contact the presenters. Ignacio and Felipe will be in carpet E, Ilya will be in carpet D, and Stephanie will be in carpet C, so that you can connect and add additional questions. Thank you very much for being here in this meetup. Hope to see you in the next one.